let's get going. It's 12 noon. So it's time to talk about our newest live-away program to Australia, happening in February next year. We're really excited about this one. Our live-aways are really taking off. So let me say a few words about Wheel and Anchor for those of you who are new, who have perhaps not participated in one of our webinars or one of our trips before. We are a community of travelers from all across Canada. After spending well over 30 years organizing tours for Canadians, I decided about 5 years ago, in fact, it's almost 6 years, to create an organization that was really dedicated to building community around travel. So really one of our hallmarks is finding like-minded people, creating adventures that often are influenced by our members in terms of the places we go and the things that we see along the way. We always welcome input in terms of the curation of our programs. But most importantly, as I say, it's about bringing like-minded people together, having lots of fun, having immersive experiences, and doing so in many cases in a slowed down format, and that particularly applies to live-aways, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. We are a very Canadian organization. We have a very, very small handful of folks that have slipped into the ranks from other countries. But for the most part, we are focused on Canadians, because I think we all know, those of us that have traveled the world together, we are a bit of a different breed unto ourselves, and our members really appreciate the fact that they can explore the world and so on with fellow Canadians, like-minded people. It's a big part of who we are and what we are all about. And as I said before, part of our hallmarks is the fact that the way that we approach travel, all of the trips that we do are curated by myself, with obviously the assistance of our growing team here at Wheel and Anchor. And we try to do it in a way that to bring you experiences that are different than what you find from sort of the average tour company out there. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good tour companies out there, but we put this vision together and bring you some amazing experiences. So that's what Wheel and Anchor is all about. As I mentioned, we are a growing team, and part of well, we're all important. Every single person on the team is important, but what's important to our members are the ones who you talk to when you pick up the phone and call into us, or when you send us an email. In particular, Paula and Barb, our trip specialists, who, in this case, Paula and Barb, from their previous experience, have a lot of knowledge about Australia, New Zealand, and so you're in really good hands. I mean, you're always in good hands with Paula and Barb, that's for sure. But when it comes to knowledge about Australia and the whole experience down there, they know a lot more than me even. So again, very important part. And those are our two wonderful team members who will look after you when you call in to inquire about or to join us for one of our trips. So our agenda today, as is usual with our webinars, is for you to find out a little bit about the experience of visiting Australia in the winter, in our winter, which of course is summer in Australia. It's an optimal time to visit, and a little bit about how this program unfolds as a live-away. And so I'm going to be your guide today as we take a little tour around Australia, in the hopes that you might join us next year. Let me say again a few words about our live-aways, and I know that some of you have participated in our live-aways before. What exactly is it? Well, first of all, it is an extended stay type of a trip. So our live-away programs are at least 2 weeks in duration, some cases 3 or 4. In the case of Australia, it's a 3-week program with an extension program at the end that I'll again explain about in a second. And we offer live-aways in a bunch of different places. We offer them in tropical places like Koh Samui in Thailand and Bali in Indonesia. We offer them in more temperate regions. We offer them throughout the Mediterranean, in Cyprus, in Malta, as well as in Madeira, the Portuguese island in the Atlantic Ocean. Next year, we're going to be introducing some new live-away programs to Mallorca, as well as to Oh my goodness. The Canary Islands is also coming up. So we're just hammering out the final details on those. And what makes these programs different? There are other types of long stay vacations where you book into an otherwise vacant hotel on the south shore of Spain for the winter for a month, and with sort of minimal excursions and uh, anyway, I won't go into what other long stay holidays are about, but liveaways are designed in a way that allow you the ability to interact with the other members of the trip, to choose the type of experience and the number of experiences that you want to have. So we give you a whole list of excursions that we have prepared, that we've curated together with our local partners. You select them in advance, depending on, do you want to do something every day? Do you want to do something once a week? And so everybody has a bit of their own pace, not to mention they have their own sense of adventure. And what we encourage on our live away programs is employing that sense of adventure and going out and venturing on your own. And particularly in the case of like Australia, Australia is, and I'll talk about this in a second, obviously very similar to Canada. We speak the same language. Things work in very much the same ways as Canada. There's so many similarities. I mean, they drive on the other side of the road. There's a lot of other differences as well, obviously. But it's a great place to sort of say, well, I'm going to go and spend a week here. I'm going to have certain curated activities from Wheel and Anchor, but at the same time, I might want to go off and venture on my own. And particularly in a country where people speak the same language, this is a perfect place to do that, because you can satisfy your own interests. And what I love about Australia and the cities that we're visiting is the fact that you can just sort of hang out and people watch and talk to the locals, because of course they speak English as well. And it's a very different type of an experience than a traditional type of a tour. And again, this live away concept applies whether you're visiting sort of a mild temperate island in the Mediterranean, or whether you're visiting spending time getting away from the winter in Thailand or in Bali in Indonesia. So it gives you that sense of slow travel, but at the same time, it's organized. There's always a host there. There's always there somebody to facilitate interactions with the community that's traveling along, and as well as any local events and activities and experiences that might come up when we're there. So that's the idea behind liveaways. And this is really a growing segment of the programs we offer at Wheel and Anchor because of their popularity. But let's come back to Australia. So I think we all know where Australia is, that continent down under in the southern hemisphere. This trip focuses on the southeastern part of Australia. And we did this for a couple of different reasons. One, you can't see all of Australia on one trip. I mean, you could, but you'd probably have to rent a motorhome and spend 3 months driving literally around the country. And most of what you'd see is desert, because, of course, as we know, Australia has one of the world's biggest desert, the entire inner part of the country. And there are many, many interesting and exciting things to see all around the city. But the best example of the culture, the nature, the wildlife, you're going to find in Sydney. Obviously, it's not the capital. Capital's Canberra, obviously, but Sydney, the most important metropolis of Australia. Melbourne, the sort of artsy city with a whole bunch of flair. I was really taken aback by Melbourne when I was there. And Tasmania, which has an entirely different sort of a climate, culture, landscapes, cuisine. It's really an amazing, amazing part of Australia to visit. And then our add-on program for those that really want something that is unique to Australia takes us up to Port Douglas, which is the gateway to the Great Barrier Reef. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So we're going to spend a week in each of these places, a week in Melbourne to start, a week down in Hobart, where we'll explore some of Tasmania, and a week up in Sydney. And that will be our program. So let's start with the first week, which is Melbourne. And when you arrive into Melbourne, particularly if you haven't been to Australia before, you sort of look around and you kind of go, did I just land in Toronto or Vancouver? Again, the similarities are quite amazing, but it then begins to unfold as where all the difference come up. We're going to be staying right in the CBD, in the central part of Melbourne City, at a wonderful apartment style hotel called the Citadines, which is, as I say, it's in the heart of the city. It's actually across from one of the big stadiums. And literally within 10 minutes, you can be in what they call Flinders Lane, which is one of the sort of foodie cafe districts in the downtown part of Melbourne. What I like about Melbourne is it's a very walkable city. The central part of the city with the library, they have an incredible Aboriginal museum down there. And the whole central part of the city is they have a free transit zone. So you can actually ride the streetcars, the trams, they call them locally, for free, which is really unique and forward thinking. And this is what I really appreciated about Australia, is because there's many things that they do that they just do better than we do back home in Canada. And I always think, wow, we should take these ideas back home. So Melbourne is a city of it's a city of artists. It's a city of coffee culture. In fact, it's world renowned for its culture of cafes and dining, which is absolutely incredible. And a lot of artists sort of hang out here. It's the more, if you were to compare it to Canada, it's like more like the Vancouver to Toronto, if you can make that comparison, right? Sydney, commercial hub, business oriented, just you tell in the demeanor of the people. Melbourne folks are a little bit more laid back. And at the same time, it's a very commercially important city. From Melbourne, as I say, we'll spend a week there. And we have a number of different excursions. I think one of the things that you can't miss if you visit this part of Australia is taking a trip down the Great Ocean Road. I did it myself in November just to have a look, and the coastline is really quite amazing. It's a bit of a drive. This is an all-day affair. We're out literally from first thing in the morning until early evening. But to go down the coast and see the 12 Apostles, these amazing geological these well, you can see them in the picture. The pictures do more justice than my description of them do. We see a bunch of other things along the way. We'll see the Gibson Steps and the Otway Harvest Trail. So we'll really venture into this area, which is out to sort of to the south west of Australia, of Melbourne. It's again perhaps the number one excursion, full day excursion that we have from Melbourne. Closer to the city, we also will head up to the Yarra Valley. Australia, as we all know, is well known for its wines, and we'll sample some of the ones from Victoria. This is the part of the province, if you will, that Melbourne sits in, and of course we all want to go out and see the kangaroos and the koalas. I mean, kangaroos are practically ubiquitous in Australia. You could be driving down the highway and one could sort of bounce across the road. And of course, there's a lot of excitement the first time you see one, and by the time you've seen it 5 times, it's it's a little bit less exciting. But the koalas, on the other hand, which we can hopefully see, they're becoming more and more endangered because of development, just like in many places around the world. But as I say, inside the Healesville Sanctuary and in the Yarra Valley areas where we'll get to experience some of Australia's native wildlife. Another thing we can another excursion that we offer is a little steam train tour. I mean, who doesn't like a steam train? They're a lot of fun. This is just out in the suburb of Melbourne called Belgrave. And we'll also have a chance to see a bit of a penguin parade here, where the fur seals and the penguins sort of bounce around along on the coast. And again, something that we don't have in Canada, and a neat sort of a thing to do while you're in the Melbourne area. We have some shorter excursions as well. We'll do a little boat cruise down the Yarra River, which sort of bisects Melbourne out to a little historic village called Williamstown. And here we'll see some interesting historic sites that give us a little bit of an insight into the history of this part of Australia. Food, as I mentioned, really important in Melbourne. Wow, I had some incredible dining experiences when I was there. And I'm a big coffee lover. Got the coffee not too far away from me here. And in Melbourne, they have they put a lot of emphasis onto coffee, and they make we think that Starbucks has a lot of varieties of coffee, but let me tell you, go into one of the classic Melbourne coffee shops, and you'll be amazed, and you have to sample, because they've turned coffee into a whole beverage culture, almost like wine, with their pour overs and their cold brews and all these different things that slowly starting to enter the equation in Canada, but they're years and years ahead, and it's fascinating. But of course, the food itself, not just in Melbourne, but all over Australia, but Melbourne in particular has quite a dining scene, and we have quite put together quite an exciting experience for that in Melbourne. And as I say, Melbourne is a wonderful city to just hang out in, because the central part of the city is walkable. The tram system is free in the central part of the city. Beyond that, it's negligible in cost, and you can go out and visit various neighborhoods and suburbs and see some of the diversity of the city. I was there for 2 weeks, and I didn't even feel like I scratched the surface on all the things that there are to do in Melbourne. From there, we'll fly down to Tasmania. Why are we going to Tasmania? Well, as opposed to other parts of Australia, first of all, the scenery is incredible. And again, pictures are worth 1,000 words, as they say. They have some amazing coastline here, Cradle Mountain, which is sort of the iconic mountain in the middle of the island. The island was, of course, a penal colony, as was all of Australia, as we all know from our history books. But of course was originally inhabited by the Aboriginals for a long, long time. And so Hobart, which was basically, one of these settlements for convicts, turned into quite a modern city, and is perhaps best known for the Museum of Old and New Art, the so-called Mona Museum, which is undoubtedly one of the things that you'll want to see while you're in Tasmania. In fact, people go all the way there just to see the Mona. We're going to stay again at a similar apartment-style hotel, which is right in the center of Hobart. And we chose to stay in Hobart because you can access a lot of parts of the island of Tasmania from there without too long of a drive. And again, it's kind of an exciting and interesting city. And we have, again, apartment hotel style accommodations, so that gives you a little bit more elbow room, and just at the same time allows you to sort of venture out and see the central part of the city. So among the things that we're going to do while we stay in Tasmania, we're going to head out to the so-called Tasman Peninsula, which is a World Heritage listed site. And this is, again, this is where the most intact convict settlement actually is in all of Australia. So it dates back to the 19th century, and is really a fascinating place to see, how all of this went down, and how, people lived there at the time when the British were sending all the convicts down. At the same time, we're going to see some amazing scenery as we pass along Port Arthur and this peninsula, and Devil's Kitchen, and a number of great sort of Instagram moments along the Tasman Peninsula. Another one of the excursions that you might do is the Bonarong Wildlife Sanctuary. Here you find, among other things, these glowworms, which are really, really cool, and you don't see in too many other places in the world. But it's also the home, or one of the homes, of the famous Tasmanian devil. We've all heard about this. He looks a little bit different than in the cartoon, but nevertheless, there's a whole bunch of other wildlife that is unique to Tasmania: wallabies, batongs, and a bunch of other birds that you just don't find in other places in the world. And so this is our wildlife experience while in Tasmania. Across from Hobart, across the channel, you find a beautiful island called Bruny, which has amazing sea cliffs and beaches. This time of the year, it is bathing season still, because of course we're in the middle of summer in Australia and Tasmania. The water's a little on the chilly side, mind you, but nevertheless, it is worth spending some time out here and experiencing this beautiful part of the island, and also enjoying some oysters for those that enjoy. On the way back, we'll experience some of that oysters, which are really inherent to the culture in Tasmania. We have some shorter tours as well, historical tours called Salamanca, which is in the colonial days of Hobart. So we'll walk along Battery Point and along the River Derwent and take in some of the historical buildings and so on that still again exist. And this is one of the best walking tours in all of Tasmania, if not all of Australia. We'll do a little bit of a sailing tour as well on a classic little tall ship that you see pictured here, and maybe even get a chance to sort of work the sails, as it were. It's a bit of an interactive experience, a lot of fun, and gives you a chance to see a little bit of the coastline of Hobart and Tasmania from the sea. Of course, Tasmania has its own wine culture as well, in the so-called Coal Valley, which is one of the bread baskets of Tasmania. You probably haven't sampled Tasmanian wine before. I don't recall seeing it on the stores of the liquor stores anywhere in Canada. I'm sure it must be there somewhere, but I find it's always neat for those that enjoy wines from different countries and different regions to sample something that we're just not accustomed to at home. We see a lot of Yellowtail and sort of the classic Australian brands on the shelves, but there's so much more to experience, and that is in part of what we're going to do here in Tasmania. From Tasmania, from Hobart, we'll then fly up to Sydney, which is the third leg of our trip. And Sydney hardly needs any introduction, given that it is the home of the world famous Harbour Bridge that you see here, and of course the Sydney Opera House, which are the installations that turned Sydney into a world-class city, as it were. And Sydney is probably best known for, apart from the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, for the beaches, Bondi Beach and Manly Beach. And again, by spending a week here, you can venture out into the different neighborhoods and explore what this beach culture in Australia is all about. But there's some very cool neighborhoods, and again, Sydney in many ways is kind of similar to Toronto, because there's a lot of diversity in Australia, in Sydney, and this is where it feels a little bit like home, particularly if you're from Toronto or Vancouver, one of the bigger cities in Australia. But at the same time, it's different because it's Australia at the end of the day. So there's a lot to experience and see and do. We're going to be staying again right downtown, or just outside of the downtown in North Sydney, at another apartment hotel style complex, which is a great way to enjoy, with a little bit more elbow room, and this is the sort of the philosophy behind the accommodations on our LiveAway programs. While we're in Sydney, of course, we're going to be doing a fantastic Sydney highlights tour, which will take about 6 hours, where we'll see, of course, from the outside at least, the Opera House. Closer to the dates, we'll see if there are performances happening. There's always performances happening throughout the year at the Sydney Opera House. So you may want to try and book a ticket to something if you're into opera, or to one of the other performances that they have there. But we'll at least see the Opera House, the Harbour Bridge, Bondi Beach. So we'll really get a taste of Sydney right off the bat on our Sydney highlights tour. Going outside of town, we get up into the Blue Mountains, and I know that for those from Ontario, we always think about Blue Mountain up in Collingwood, but of course the Blue Mountains is a vast UNESCO World Heritage Site that is just outside of Sydney. This is the place that Sydney-siders go to get out into the nature and into the countryside. And again, has a plethora of flora and fauna here. We see kookaburras and different kinds of parrots, and again, a whole diversity of wildlife that is unique to Australia, and some incredible scenery and viewpoints. We'll take a walking tour around the rocks. This is the area that, again, was established as a settlement at the time when convicts were being sent down from the UK to be banished to down under, as it were. And so you see remnants of those buildings as you wander around in here. There's buildings that date back even to the 18th century, as long as Sydney has sort of been around. And it's a wonderful, wonderful tour of the historical sort of side of Sydney. We'll also have the opportunity to visit Taronga Zoo, and you think, why would we include a zoo in our visit? Well, Taronga, I really wanted to have as an optional excursion on this program, because it is really one of the best zoos in the world. It's right on the harbour, as you can see from the giraffe has got the Sydney Opera House in the background. It is a massive zoo that houses not only Australia's wildlife, but wildlife from all over the world, and it's world renowned for their commitment to conservation and education and research. And so, it's why I think it's important to visit zoos. And I think Taronga is, in fact, I remember when my parents first went to Australia some 40 years ago. They visited Taronga Zoo and brought back some incredible memories. So this is something that we will include as one of our programs. Of course, food tour. Food is always a big part of our experiences at Wheel and Anchor, and Sydney has its own interesting cuisine, and we'll get a chance to sample some of that. Our food tours are always some of our most popular, because it enables you to get an insider's point of view on the things that Aussies, and in this case Sydneysiders, most like to eat. So there's a whole bunch of different not only food but also beverages that we'll get to try while down in Australia, and you'll probably want to enjoy a lot more during your free time. Of course, you can't visit Sydney without taking a little sea cruise around, and you can see all the activity in the harbour. And so this will allow us to see some of these iconic highlights as well from the water, as well as the ones that we see from the land, and so many other things. We'll have other excursions as well available to choose from, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the things that are on offer. But again, the beauty of the LiveAway concept is that it enables you enough time to also coordinate and organize some of your own experiences. And listen, a lot of us have sort of friends or relatives that live down in Australia, so this is also a great opportunity to sort of spend time with them, as well as interact and get their input on things to see and do while in Australia. From Sydney, one can either obviously continue and venture off on one's own to perhaps to visit another part of Australia, or to join us on our extension program, which takes us up to Port Douglas and the Great Barrier Reef. So we fly from Sydney up to Cairns, which is in the northern part of in Queensland, in the northern part of the country. And then we take a drive from there up to Port Douglas, which is really one of the main gateway points to the Great Barrier Reef, which, of course, as we all know, is one of the largest reefs and most important reefs in the world. So on our program there, from Port Douglas, and you can see here, it's a very quaint, sort of a charming town. And there are two main reasons to visit Port Douglas. One of them is, of course, to venture out onto the Great Barrier Reef. And so that will be one of our excursions, where we head out to this huge catamaran, which is situated at the edge of the reef, at the edge of Agincourt Reef specifically. And from this catamaran, there's a whole bunch of activities that you can do that are part of the excursion. So you can go swimming and snorkeling and really get to sample and feel a part of the Great Barrier Reef, and learn all about what it's all about and the challenges that it faces. And then there's a number of things that you can do in addition. If you're a scuba diver, you can do. If you're a certified scuba diver, you can do a dive on the reef. You can have a snorkel tour with a marine biologist. You can do a helmet dive. So this is for people who are perhaps not otherwise divers, but want to go underwater and experience what marine life is all about. So there's a number of different activities that that one can do from there. So it's a whole day out on the Great Barrier Reef, and would undoubtedly be one of the most lasting memories of your visit in Australia. Port Douglas itself, we have a free day available because, again, I'm really big on free days being part of the experience, so that you have time to go and explore around. There's a 4 Mile Beach, which you can see pictured here, an absolutely beautiful golden sand beach that you can walk along. You can visit the wildlife habitat. There's the Mossman Gorge, which is accessible by a short shuttle bus ride from Port Douglas, and you'll get a real sense of this very wild country, very different than the urban areas of Melbourne and Sydney in the south part of the country. And the other big reason to visit Port Douglas in Northern Australia is the Daintree Rainforest, which, as noted here in the caption, is one of the oldest rainforests in the world. The biodiversity here dates back apparently over 130 million years. And so we'll have an informative cruise that tells us all about the rainforest, and again, what it's all about, and the various flora and fauna that can be found there, but also a little bit about the challenges that rainforests, not only here but elsewhere in the world, are facing. We'll see some mangrove forests. If we're lucky, we'll see some of the crocodiles that inhabit this part of the world, and we'll go on to see a tea plantation and some beautiful mountains and this World Heritage rainforest that Daintree is so well known for. So this is a terrific 3-day getaway up to the north that will really give you a great taste of Queensland, what the North part of Australia is all about. So that is basically the sum up of our Live Away program in Australia. I encourage you to look through the program itinerary in greater detail that describes all the excursions that we have on offer, as well as the accommodations. And if you're considering a trip like this, I also encourage you to check out other things that you could do and experience while you're there, because again, Australia has so much on offer. So this program we've been able to put together, and I think offers great value. So the whole 3-week Live Away available for $74.90 Canadian, and for a little bit more, a couple thousand more, you can have your own room. So for 3 weeks in Australia, I think that's a pretty amazing value. That includes, as with all of our Live Away programs, your transfers from the airport. It includes the flights, the internal flights from Melbourne to Tasmania and Tasmania up to Sydney. We have an $800 activity credit in there, so that will cover a number of different excursions. If, of course, you want to do all of the excursions, you'll have to top that up somewhat. But of course, if you would rather not do all the excursions, then we offer a refund for those that would rather sort of take it easy and kind of do their own thing. So both options are available to you. And of course, our host will be there during the entire time to ensure you have a great stay. We'll have some cocktail receptions and a farewell dinner, and some other great experiences all along the way. So it's a pretty well-packed program. For those that want to extend up to Port Douglas and the Great Barrier Reef, that program is available at $19.90 with a modest single supplement. And that, of course, it includes a one-way flight up from Sydney to Cairns, 4 nights in Port Douglas, as well as the tours that I mentioned in the description. And again, you can find out all the details by reading through the program itinerary. And I note for the post-extension program to Port Douglas that we include the one-way flight, because most people then will fly from Cairns back to Canada via, depending on which airline, where you're coming from in Canada and which airline combination you want. You can fly from Cairns, for example, either back to Sydney to get up to Vancouver, or you can fly directly up to Hong Kong and back over. So that's why we set it up that way, that you can fly into Melbourne to begin the program and out of Cairns at the end. And of course, our dear friends at First Travel, who do all of our air arrangements, can help you with your airfare if you'd like our assistance. But of course, you're always welcome to book your own airfare as well. What's excluded from the programs, of course, the airfare itself. And if you are If you're going to be arriving earlier or leaving later, then the transfers will be in addition. And on this program, because of the nature of the accommodation, we're including the breakfast is excluded, but we're sort of heading more and more in that direction because our members often just like to have a very modest breakfast. And in these apartment hotel style places, is you've got a place to have your morning cereal or your toast or whatever it is that you might like. And of course, trip cancellation and medical insurance is also optional, but strongly recommended. So for those of you who are interested in signing up for this program early, we offer a couple of $100 off for the LiveAway for the main program if you book before the 15th of May. And yeah, I think that sums up this great LiveAway program. So, Paul, I think a few questions have popped in. And of course, if you do have questions at any time, you can always drop us an email. Paul or Barb will answer those questions. And if they don't have I'm sure they'll have the answers right off the bat, given their extensive knowledge of Australia. But if not, then you can they can reach back to the other resources, and we'll always get those answers for you as soon as we can. So, Paula, let me know what questions have come in so far.
The biggest burning question, I think, which is going to be on many members, and it's come in here, is are we offering New Zealand lined up with Australia? Is there word on that yet?
We do have a New Zealand LiveAway program, and they are at somewhat similar dates, but there is a gap in between. So for those that are interested in doing both, and it would obviously make sense to do both, then that is possible. So we will let you know the New Zealand LiveAway dates as soon as possible. We were just finalizing that program recently. There is a bit of a gap in between, but they are at roughly the same time of the year.
Perfect. Yeah, if you want to be kept up to date on that, you can reach out to Barbara, myself, and we will be sure to update you once the New Zealand details are available. Question that always comes up is the weather. Country's huge. What kind of weather can our members expect to experience here?
Exactly. Well, Paula, you've been there more than I have. So I mean, it's summer in New Zealand. So I mean, Melbourne, Sydney, Melbourne, Tasmania are all going to be quite warm. So I mean, the temperatures are going to be definitely in the 20s for most of that time.
Exactly. Yeah, expect to see temperatures in the 20s, and it might cool off into the high teens or low 20s at night. And it's a fairly drier. Tasmania is going to be even we'll feel a little bit cooler slightly. And then up in the north is which is ideal that it's structured towards the end of those dates. So because it's warm year round up there. And it can be a little bit more humid in the north. So it'll be at a better time of year where that's starting to decline, but you're still going to have at least mid 20s to low 30s potentially. But great property, all of them have pools, and you're not too far from the ocean, and one day is going to be out on the ocean. So yeah, that would be the range.
There's many times to cool off, but it is February, it is Australia, it's summer, so it can get warmer. I mean, you've all read about the weather. I mean, occasionally they have some extreme weather in Australia. It's more unusual than you would think, but it wouldn't be impossible that the temperature does climb up even into the high 20s and low 30s. That's not beyond the realm of possibility, but typically I would say, Paula, wouldn't you say it's generally in the mid to high 20s in these spots?
Yeah, definitely. And this is an ideal time of year to go on either side of their the peak of their summer. And not their winter, typically, depending on which part. The country's huge, so you can have a lot of diversity in terms of the climate. Exactly. A couple of other questions here that have come in is, what is the proportion? So this is also very common with a lot of our trips. What is the number of singles versus couples that will be on the trip? Typically, I don't know if you want to answer that one, Gordon. I can leave that with you.
Well, yeah, we can only answer typically because obviously we don't know until people sign up. But we have a lot of solo traveler members at Wheel and Anchor. In fact, I think we are up to about a third of our overall members are solo travelers, and that is reflective of most trips. On some trips, we have as many as half of participants as solo travelers, but I would say that it's usually if there is a usual, not less than about a quarter. Some of those solo traveler members will join our companions for the road program, or they'll come along with their own traveling companion, and so they might share a room. Some of them prefer their own single room, but usually there's at least a few to as many as half. The group size we should probably note on this is limited to 18 people. So we expect to have we expect to have a group size generally of a program like this of between 12 and 18 people, but we are capping it for the best experience of our members. We like smaller groups, and it's about the right size for Australia.
Yeah, definitely. And small group trips in Australia and New Zealand are very hard to come by. They've anyway, so great opportunity. I have another member who's asking if New Zealand's going to be before or after these dates, and I believe it's falling after in
That
March.
is correct.
Yes.
It will take place in, I believe, early March. So it will be following Australia. Uh, um, but again, we'll come back to you with the dates as soon as we have them, and we will have them quite soon.
Perfect. Yeah, and still a great time of year for New Zealand as well. Just for those
Exactly.
that don't know, Barb and I used to specialize in the South Pacific region, and both have lived down there. So I don't know if that spurred the start of her travel career as well, or she was already in the travel industry. I was in the hotel business and then got in a restaurant business and then got into the travel business because of it. And so super passionate and excited to share this one with everyone.
Okay.
We have another question here with regards to, please confirm whether we can do multiple excursions on the Great Barrier Reef. Do you offer multiple excursions, snorkeling, helmet, seafloor walk? So Chris and Sandy, I can clarify that. I guess I need a little bit of clarification from you. Are you looking to do multiple of those items in the one day out there, or go out for a second day? You can definitely go out for a second day on your free day. And then depending on how much time each one takes and how many you want to do, I believe there may be opportunity to do a couple of them.
I think you can do a couple of them, but I don't think you can do all of them just by a time limitation. We are out
Exactly.
for a good chunk of the day. So, for example, if you wanted to go scuba diving, that's like a 45-minute dive with sort of getting ready and getting the whole thing probably takes a little over an hour. But given that you're out there for several hours, you could certainly do that and something else. Yeah, it's not like there's just one activity, but we can clarify exactly what is realistic in terms of how much that you could actually do out there. And that Paula raises a good point. We also have a free day because if you want to go back out on it for a second day out to the reef, that is obviously possible. And so we can give you the information on where to facilitate that. There's a number of different outfits that operate these Great Barrier Reef tours. So the one that we do is quite a good one out on the Agincourt Reef. But if you're somebody that's really keen, there's a whole second day that you can see a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, if you want members who really enjoy things on their free days, and our liveaways tend to sometimes like duplicate the experience, and we'll spend a second day going to sightsee the similar attraction or such. So definitely a possibility.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I think that's wrapped up the questions. I don't think I missed any. I apologize if I have, but you
I
can
don't see
reach out
any
to Barb
other.
and I.
Yeah,
Do you see another one? Sorry.
no, I don't see another one. I
Did I
think
miss it?
we got all the ones that are here. But of course, you might have another question later on. We're here for that. We're here for your questions. The best way is to email them in, or to
Give us a
forward.
call,
Yeah, or just give a
email
call
or
in.
call.
email or call. And as I say, we're keen to make sure you have all your questions answered. This is a great program. It's a great way to travel. You're going to be seeing more and more liveaways coming from us at Wheel and Anchor, because the feedback from our members is that they just love them, because slow travel is the way to go. You're not going to see all of Australia all in one go. If you want to see all of Australia, as I say, go and rent a camper van and drive around the country for 3 months. And
Even
even
then, I've been 6 times and I lived there for a year to start with, and I still could give you a laundry list of things I haven't seen and done.
the way it is.
So it's a
The beauty
great start.
It's a great start, and it's a great way to sort of soak in the culture. And honestly, Melbourne, Sydney, Hobart, such great cities. It's a great part of the world. So we hope you'll join us for this experience. And again, if you have our contact information is there, I'm sure you all know it by now. Thanks for joining us for this webinar. We've got some more webinars coming up this week. In fact, we have, let's see, we have our new trip to Colombia, our sojourn to Colombia in South America. Another one I'm super excited about. That's coming up on Thursday. And so if you are, is it Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday. So if you're interested in Colombia at all, join us for that webinar. And Paula, are you putting the link there for that one, Paula? No.
I don't have.
That's okay. We don't have it handy. Anyway, you'll find it.
Sorry,
You'll find it in last
my
week's.
bad.
Or if you are just hearing about Colombia now and you want to find out more about it, drop us a note. We'll make sure we get you signed up for that webinar as well. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. I look forward to seeing you either on a trip sometime soon or on another webinar. And again, we appreciate all of our members at Wheel and Anchor. Take care. Bye-bye for now.